Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mike Manx with Youth Service America, and excited to share the result of a lot of years of thinking and planning with you all as we developed this new era of youth service in America national strategy that we are kicking off this week, right before America 250 celebrations this weekend. After so many years of thinking about it and looking ahead forward to it. Exciting to see the big day arrive on Saturday, and for us to launch this strategy as really part of building the next era, not just of youth service, but of youth participation in our democracy, and really building it for the next 250 years. Um, if I think most of you, if you're on this call, are probably familiar with Youth Service America, but we believe that young people, communities, and democracy thrive when all young people are connected to and contribute to their communities. So our mission for the last 40 years, we actually celebrate our 40th anniversary this November, has really been towards making youth participation, youth service, the common expectation and the common experience of every young person growing up in America. And we know that we are pretty far away from every young person having these opportunities. As we've started looking at the data several years ago, the same range of numbers came out again and again and again that tells us about 1 in 4 young people in America regularly participate in different ways, which of course means we are leaving out 3 out of every 4 young Americans out of actively participating. And as of today, that's about 64 million young people who do not have regular access and supports to participate in their communities through all the types of opportunities. Um, and that's really backed up by data from 2 national prevalence surveys that we did a couple of years ago that we are actually rerunning. One of them is open right now. That really shows the percentage of young people who participate in different ways through our schools, and then through after school youth development, community-based and faith-based organizations. And so you can see, other than the one in the mid 30s of students who participate in community service through their school experience in some way, every other stat is in the teens. So we know lots of ways to go to reach our mission of every young person having these types of experiences. Um, and really looking that America 250 and the celebrations around it are a key civic and cultural moment for us to really have these conversations about what we want our democracy to look like, what active participation in it looks like, and how we kind of turn the tide against the recent trends that most young people do not think we're headed in the right direction. Only 11% of 18 to 29-year-olds, and that young people are also unsure that democracy is even the best system of government to achieve our collective goals. So, and that's lower than any other generation in society right now. And so, recognizing that we need to think about this in a different way and do things differently than we have, that has gotten us stuck at that 1 in 4. So we've really taken the last year to to really listen to folks across the field, to really do some deep dive into to some different potential ideas and strategies, and to really try to figure out what would actually be helpful in addressing the barriers to increase youth participation, and what would actually, what people actually want and what would be helpful through our partner network at all levels. So we've really spent the last 9 or 10 months on this national listening tour that I think most of you on this call participated in, either in phase 1 or phase 2. That's why you were invited to today's session, because we wanted to close the loop with you and fill you in on what all of your input resulted in. But just as a quick recap, last fall we really focused on reaching out and listening to local partners across the country. So we had several virtual forums that we did that had several hundred people. We had a survey open, which had over 500 respondents. And we had the virtual wish wall that folks could add their kind of big dream and big wish for what the future of youth service in the country looks like. We then transitioned into working, connecting with statewide partners in over the winter, particularly around MLK Day, where we supported about 45 statewide forums across the country that several of you were organizers of or participants in that all happened in January around MLK Day. We continued to leave the survey open during that time period, and then Points of Light, our partners who are developing a separate national volunteer strategy to really look at volunteering of all ages, also had a survey open that had quite a number of both youth and youth partner respondents. We then took all of that information from phase one and phase two into conversations with national partner organizations this spring, which culminated in a summit of about 40 people from about 30 national organizations at Frank Lloyd Wright's Wingspread in Wisconsin, where we were together for 3 days out along the shores of Lake Michigan, and really diving into what the strategy looks like. And we started with as we go into the strategies that made it, we actually started with 40 potential strategies that we were talking about back in phase one. And through these phases, we narrowed down first to 20, and then at the Swing Spread gathering with those key national organizations, narrowed it down to the final 12 that you will see in just a minute. And then we previewed the strategy last week at the Points of Light conference. Alongside, they launched their national volunteer strategy, which has a couple of youth things, but they mostly left the youth work to us and to this strategy. But we're very much connected, and we'll be moving ahead on these two strategies, side by side. And then you'll hear a little bit about some other next steps that we'll be taking as we start rolling this out over the next 6 months. So, um, uh, before we get into the strategies, just wanted to offer kind of some basic overview and kind of definitions of things that everyone is on the same page. When we talk about youth service or youth participation, we really do define that as broadly as possible. So all of these forms of participation in volunteering and service, voting and civic engagement, youth voice, leadership, decision making, joining, philanthropy, you know, really any form of young people participating in their communities, we see kind of all connected, interconnected together, kind of in the ecosystem of youth participation. So we want to support it all. And we want to support it in all settings, everywhere that young people live and are. So in schools, during the school day, after school through youth development and out of school time programs, the rest of the time in evenings and weekends when they're with their families and out in their communities through community and faith-based organizations, and then obviously including state and local government kind of agencies and programs as a key partner in all of this. When we talk about this strategy, we really do want it to be a little bit of something for everyone. We know we can't be everything to everyone, but we hope we can at least offer some strategy that applies to all forms of participation and in all settings. And that through this, that we pay particular attention to groups of young people who face particular barriers where we know participation tends to be lower because there's facing a whole lot more challenges in participation. So looking at young people from low-income families and neighborhoods, young people of color, young people in rural communities, and then all of these groups of young people who, for most adults, the first thought is how are we going to serve these groups but we want to flip the script of making sure that they are also asked to serve and given that power in their communities. That we use this kind of overarching term of youth not usually asked to serve to encompass all those groups. So as we roll out these strategies, we'll be paying particular attention to all of these groups. And that we really want this to result in young people feeling like they belong to their communities, that they matter to their communities, that they have meaning and purpose in their lives, and hope for the future. And that's not, kind of um, an unimportant thing. I think sometimes we go like, oh, all the lovey-dovey peace and love, hope and, but it really is, the research shows us how important all of these things are and how interconnected they all are to just being connected to and again, having that kind of role of active contribution, in your life and in your communities. So that's some of the thinking that went into all of this. Uh, as you'll see, we've really organized this to address four types of barriers. And again, most of you were in previous sessions, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on this because you've heard a lot of this. But looking at the lack of opportunity and expectation and asks, the lack of knowledge and skills, the lack of access to resources, primarily the funding that folks need, and then the lack of believing that their participation will make a difference and trust and belief in kind of in the system and that it's something worth participating in. So you'll see we've organized and you'll see a little bit of a ranking of what we've heard from the listening tour of that lack of resources being the top barrier that people have told us, the lack of opportunities and the lack of sense of efficacy being kind of tied in the middle, and then the lack of knowledge and skills as the least, but still a pretty significant barrier. So you'll see we've organized this by those four barriers, which means we have four types of solutions that align with those barriers. So you'll see three different activation priority strategies. You'll see three different training strategies. You'll see three funding and resourcing strategies, and you'll see three recognition and storytelling strategies. And then you'll also see that we really tried to make this, bigger than any one organization and any one program. That we really want to move this from just doing more of the same programming
There's a message
among,
from the person
YSA
checking as the address.
um, and other national organizations to really looking at field capacity and infrastructure and systems and culture change and really kind of collective impact priorities for the field. And so you'll see that's how the strategy has been organized. In just about 30 seconds, I'll switch to the strategy itself. But you'll see it's organized kind of from the bottom up in those same in those kind of categories. So you'll see kind of our current direct programming from YSA and our national partners, and if that's the base that this is all built on. You'll see some policy agenda priorities. You'll see that field infrastructure, capacity building, systems change priorities, and those are really the 12 core ones that we're going to dive into, and then the field-wide collective impact categories. So as I'm going through, you can also pull up this survey, and I will drop this into the chat as well, where you can share which of the strategies as we're talking through are most appealing, most interesting, would be most helpful to you. So the strategy is published on ysa.org at ysa.org/new era. And you'll see first an overview document explaining the strategy, explaining the listening tour, kind of giving mostly the same background that I just walked through with all of you. So we won't spend time on that right now. But here is the set of priorities that we're going to be focusing on for the next several years. And I will note, as I mentioned before, we started with 40. We ended with 12 kind of in across the activation funding, training, and recognition categories. We want you to know that if you don't see something that you thought was important and that you really provided input on, that is all still kind of in the full report on all of this. And we are not kind of dropping forever all of those other strategies. Our hope is to get to those other 28 at some point in the future, but recognizing that we just can't focus on 40 kind of big strategies all at once right away. And so we narrowed down to 12 that we're focused on at least for the next 3 to 5 years out of this 10-year campaign. So you'll see at first some of the national level kind of collective impact priorities that we're going to be focusing on with national organizations, which I won't spend a whole lot of time on today because we're doing a call for national organizations tomorrow. But really looking at kind of advancing the field through bringing more funding in, doing research measurement evaluation, kind of partnerships and coalition building, policy, looking at how we all better utilize technology, marketing, communications, kind of all of those kind of things that make up a field, and we have some priorities for that. But this is what I really want to dive into because I think this is the most applicable to most partners. And again, you'll see we have three strategies in each of the four categories where our kind of strategy category aligns with the barrier. So we'll go kind of column by column and explain what the priorities are. So the first in the activation campaigns to address the barrier around lack of opportunities and asks is to really focus on making sure there are kind of systemic and widespread opportunities for youth voice, youth leadership, and youth decision making. Recognizing that the place that most people are going to start with this is something like a youth advisory council or a youth board or having youth on other boards, but recognizing that there's a lot of other strategies and models for that as well that can engage larger numbers of young people. And we know that too often those opportunities are really limited to a small number of people, right? Like there can only be so many young people on a youth council, or maybe a couple of youth on a board. And so figuring out how we move, you know, kind of how we add to those models to make sure that there are opportunities for a whole lot more young people to feel like they have, opportunities for their voice, leadership, and to be involved in decision making in the institutions and in the communities in which they live. The second priority is really focused on working with national youth development organizations. So think, the Scouts and the Boys and Girls Clubs and 4-H and Campfire and FFA and, all of those types of organizations that have chapters and affiliates all across the country. Pretty much every community has at least one of them, if not several of them. And recognizing that the research tells us that, if you are a member of one of those organizations, you are much more likely to be engaged because they all have service or citizenship or community engagement as one of their programmatic pillars. At the same time, we recognize that just because it's a pillar at the national level does not mean it always filters down to every club and every youth. And so, and it differs across those organizations. So there's a lot of work to do both in getting young people to join these organizations, and they're all facing membership decline challenges over the years. But also, kind of once they are a member, really working to ensure that these organizations actually do provide these opportunities, to every club and every member, and that they need the support to do that. And then the third activation priority is really around supporting the 1 in 4 who are already engaged, really taking on the leadership role of engaging their peers. That their service becomes not just about kind of the direct service that they were already doing, but really kind of playing that community organizer role and bringing lots more of their peers into the work. So those are the three activation campaign priorities. In funding and resourcing, our top priority is really looking at building a common grant application system for the field. So this is very similar to if you're familiar with the Common College application, kind of the same approach. That any organization that offers grant programs like YSA does would hopefully sign on to this. That there'd be a single kind of portal, a single application, a single reporting process where people can apply and receive multiple grants from across organizations through one system instead of having to navigate dozens of different systems and apply for $500 here and $1,000 there and $750 over there, and we can really combine some of those funding streams and try to get the types of resources that people need in a much kind of faster and easier way for you all to navigate. And then really looking at kind of building out, kind of using that common grant application model, two levels of funding. One is really the institutional level funding to partner organizations, particularly focused on providing the staffing capacity. And we very clearly heard that's the number one barrier that most organizations face is you just don't have the staffing capacity to provide these types of programming. Uh, and that's largely due to funding to pay those staff. And so recognizing that we need to try to get the field focused on providing the flexibility and the size of grants that will allow for that staffing capacity. And then the third is really at the kind of youth led project level or program level, kind of with your program staff at the kind of at the local level of how we provide and more funding and resourcing to just support project implementation and particularly calling out the need for transportation funding or in-kind partnerships as another one of the most common barriers that we've heard through all of this is just if you're not doing something kind of on site at your program or at your school that transportation costs really become a big challenge. Um, so those are the three funding priorities. In training and skill building, really looking at building opportunities for people to connect with each other through online learning communities, peer mentorship, regular kind of networking opportunities, looking at a train the trainer model, recognizing that, a few key staff at national organizations cannot train the whole country in this. And that all of you out there, who do this work every day have just as much wisdom and knowledge and experience to share. And so how do we build the systems to make that happen? To really, make sure you have support from your peers, in your community and across the country um, in learning from each other. The second is really continuing to provide training and professional development to the adult staff, in schools, after school, and youth development programs, kind of across those partners, and really recognizing that our role is primarily curation and helping people identify kind of the best resources out of everything that's available out in the world. And that probably most things that need to exist probably already exist. Someone has created them, and it's really about helping connect people to the right resources and training opportunities. And that people want kind of practical things that can be immediately applied, easy on-ramps, kind of the snackable and stackable pairing of types of opportunities. And then similarly, really looking at training for those youth project leaders and local program staff, and making sure that that's kind of friendly to them, in terms of how that information is presented, the types of information, recognizing that the use of AI in planning and implementation, and that there's lots of opportunities, to kind of use the same types of content, but presented in different ways and using kind of new tools that we may not have had 3, 5, 10 years ago. And then finally, on recognition and storytelling, let me see if I can scroll over here. The first is really focusing on how to help young people tell their own stories and how to help adults tell the stories about young people that they work with, and looking at, how we develop partnerships with both traditional and kind of social media uh, companies and journalists and influencers to make that happen. The second category is all around different forms of recognition and scholarships and graduation honors and all kinds of things in that space, with a particular focus on an alternative to the President's Volunteer Service Award that we very clearly heard that people, really loved and used, and since that's been frozen for a year and kind of no intel yet on if or when that will come back, recognizing that there's space for an alternative there. And we've heard, some things that people would want changed about that. So even if the PVSA does wind up coming back, that we think there's room for a model that is similar but works differently and provides the types of recognition in the ways that people are looking for. And then specifically kind of within school systems, really looking at, how both at the K-12 and higher ed levels of how to make sure that students can receive academic credit and various kind of skill certifications and connections to career pathways and career skills and workforce skills out of their service or service learning experiences. So those are the 12. And then as you go through, you'll see there's a couple of policy agenda priorities that we're thinking about that would support all of those strategies. And then you'll see the set of YSA kind of current YSA programming that we will continue to do in some form in the coming years to support all of this. But recognizing we're going to focus on kind of our day-to-day work primarily on implementation of these 12 strategies. So as we wrap up, just have a minute or two. If folks have questions, you can either drop into the chat or come off mute and ask. And then again, if you want to kind of go through this quick survey and let us know which of these 12 you're most interested in. And then there's a little bit of a sign up at the end as well that you can continue to stay in the loop on all of this as we go. And in terms of while you're thinking of any questions, just some next steps on our end. We'll be convening national partner working groups that will kick off in July and August. We're going to be looking to organize state and local partner forums in September around 9/11 Day. And for those of you who organize the forums around MLK Day, you will be hearing from us shortly in the next either this week or early next week about the opportunity for another grant on organizing those. And then really we're going to kick into implementation of these priorities this fall. And then coming out of the state and local partner forums, kind of ongoing state youth alliances that will hopefully, if not first convened around 9/11 Day, that will be convened and with an initial draft state level version of this strategy by Thanksgiving or the end of the year. So that's how we're kicking off. And Tammy, yes, we'll send out a copy of all of the slides in the follow-up that we do to this with the recording to everyone. And then you'll also see back on the website at ysa.org/new era. At the bottom, you'll actually see all of the slides from that wing spread convening that I mentioned, which is where a lot of these were originally developed for. And within that, you'll see kind of the full report out of the listening tour. There's, I don't know, 40 or 50 slides kind of on all the details that we heard. So if you are interested in kind of digging deep into all of that, that is all at ysa.org/new era for you to explore as well.
Thank you so much for your time. I wanted to hop on here and ask a quick question, if that's okay.
Sure, go for it, Logan.
Okay, so my name is Logan. I filled out that form about the partners. My name, or I'm in South Carolina's teen right now, and my work is really aligned with Youth Service America. And you said something about social media and partnering with people who use that as an avenue to kind of engage youth. And I was kind of wondering how I can get in.
Sure. So I will say, these are, we've gotten to the point of identifying what the strategies are. We have not fully developed each of these yet. So that's part of what we'll do with those working groups, is really, we're going to have one around each of these four kind of types of strategies that are really going to do some joint program design and joint fundraising around, kind of the specifics around each of these strategies. Um, so I don't have an immediate answer for you of how to
Right.
get involved at an individual level in that. But please stay in touch with us, stay in the loop, watch for updates and as we develop each of these 12 um, and roll them out over the next, year or two, there will definitely be opportunities. I don't know what they are yet.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Mike, I have a question. Were we supposed to, or did we already fill out a link to officially participate?
There is no official link or sign up yet. Again, we're just kind of announcing and rolling out the strategy, and then the specific kind of partner engagement will come. The most immediate opportunity for local partners will be once we organize those state forums around 9/11 day. We'll announce kind of where all of those are, and that will be the kind of best way to start for either statewide or local organizations would be to participate kind of in that, and then the ongoing work of the state level kind of alliance we're calling, but the group of partners that each that are a lead partner in each state will convene.
Okay, thank you so much. I was like, I want to make sure I didn't miss it, so.
Sure. Yes. No. I think I breezed past that because I was watching the clock in that next step slide of those state forums around 9/11 day will really be the first opportunity for kind of for everyone who participated in the listening tour to kind of reconnect back in to what it looks like within their state. Right. All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna wrap up and stop the recording. But I see Scott from my team is on. The two of us will stay on if folks have other questions or want to chat a little bit. But otherwise, want to thank you all for your interest in this. And again, lots more coming in the next few months as we roll this out. But wanted to at least share where we landed and where we're starting with on this strategy before the 4th of July. So thank you again, everybody, and hope you have a great 4th of July weekend this weekend. And come back to it next week ready to work on a new era of youth service in America.